one of the main reasons it's so different to Keynesianism is it doesn't vouch for increased government control, and it doesn't push for government spending as a tool for happiness or a tool for the benefit of everyone. And so the Keynesian philosophies, that the monetary scientists and the political scientists, they really kind of dovetail each other in terms of like, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to print all this money, and that's going to help you write policies. It's going to help everyone. But like, look at the mess we're in today, right? All-time highs in gold, all-time highs in Bitcoin, all-time highs in the stock market. At the same time as the inequality of wealth is bigger than ever before. People's real income is going backwards. What the fuck happened in 1971? Excellent website. Go and look at it. But it clearly shows you how the price of everything's been moving up, but the real inflation rate has been so high that it was a better standard of living 50 years ago than it is today. And ask yourself simple questions like, why is it that it's getting more and more difficult to afford to go on holiday every year? Why is it that every couple that you know in their 30s, both the husband and the wife are working? Why is it that no one can afford to get onto the property ladder? Why is it that the average income, instead of it being 2.5 times your income to purchase of real estate to move into as a young family, it's now 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 times the average salary, right? This is the problem with inflationary monetary policy driven by the Keynesian school. And John Maynard Keynes, not that this episode is about that, but he's a fruity fella. And I can perhaps do an episode in the future about who he was and why he was important. But let's get into it. So what are the core insights of the Austrian school now that we've covered a bit of the history and who the major players are? I'll try and keep this as simple as possible. And thankfully, a lot of the content is very simple. So it's not hard to understand. But these are the kind of concepts that I wish I'd been introduced to at university or even earlier as a teenager, right? Sitting in business studies classes, like trying to understand, like, how does the economy work? Well, how can I fit into the economy? What's an opportunity? What's a dead end? Now, some of that's just trial and error. But equally, had I had this lens on the world, I would have made superior decisions back then that would have saved me time. And I encourage you, if any of this is interesting, then just hit pause wherever you might be listening to me, jot it down. Like, how does this apply to your life? So the first area I want to mention is time preference. And you can have something called high time preference and low time preference. And really what it is why tomorrow matters today. And basically, the value that we put on something in the present is different to what we put on it in the future. So if you were to give me $100 now versus $100 in a year, I value those two things differently. And so a low time preference person is patiently saving, builds capital and wealth. A high time preference person wants to spend now and consume in the moment, and that long term leads to poverty. Now, why does this matter? Well, it explains where an interest rate comes from, and it's essentially the compensation for waiting. So if you were to get $100 today or $100 in the future, what is the differential in price between those two moments that you receive the capital? And the differential is an interest rate. And so when you doctor or manipulate interest rates via central banking, there's a handful of men that sit down and go, oh, do you know what? I think the economy is a bit overcooked at the moment. We're going to take off the interest rate by 0.25%. Oh, no, we're going to take it off by 0.5%. We're going to put it up. But they're manually changing the cost of capital. And when you massage the interest rate to become too cheap, this increases malinvestments and actually, through the Austrian lens, causes the boom-bust recessionary process that we go through. Let's just think about this in the real world. What does this mean? Going back to this idea of me as a teenager, and I'm thinking about saving for something. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to save up for this big goal. But then an impulse buy comes along, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy that now. And I never get to the bigger goal. And it's that concept that it teaches delayed gratification. Now, one of the problems with an inflationary monetary policy is that $100 that you receive today, well, you know that what that buys today is a pair of trainers. If you keep that $100 and you save it for 12 months, well, it's not going to buy you a pair of trainers because the money itself is eroding in power, purchasing power. So, and we'll come on to that later, governments distort the price signal with easy credit. And it creates bubbles like the 2008 housing crisis that, the housing crash, the overvalued mortgage market, and the global financial crisis it was called at the time. So ask yourself, like, how might this affect your daily choices? Do you choose to eat that cake right now or not? Do you choose to walk or do you choose to take a taxi? Do you choose to spend today or save for tomorrow? These are all time preference concepts. And what I have learned is that, and we'll come on to what sound money is now, the ability to save with sound money helps lower my time preference such that I have a better understanding of my future because I can rely on a pot of capital to be there for me as and when I need it.